Ladies, let's talk. You want to know how to keep him hooked? Let's start by throwing out the idea that you have to twist yourself into someone you're not, perform emotional gymnastics, or play by outdated rules. Here's what most women get wrong. They think the secret to keeping a man is being perfect, always looking amazing, always saying the right thing, always being chill when something's bothering them. But that's not the secret. That's the trap. Attraction is powerful. It draws someone in, it sparks interest, stirs curiosity, and gets that initial attention. But attraction alone is not what creates emotional investment, and it's certainly not what makes someone stay. This is where so many people, especially women, are misled by dating advice that focuses almost entirely on appearance, surface level chemistry, or strategies to be irresistible. The reality? Attraction might light the spark, but it's depth that keeps the flame alive. When a man is genuinely captivated by a woman, it's rarely just because she's beautiful or charming. Though those things might catch his eye, what really grabs his heart is who she is beyond the surface. The way she thinks, the way she carries herself, the way she listens, the way she makes him feel, not just desired, but deeply understood. That's the difference between someone who is momentarily exciting and someone who becomes unforgettable. Too many women get caught in the cycle of constantly trying to maintain attraction. They worry about whether they're being too much or not enough. They overanalyze texts, second-guess their feelings, or suppress their needs because they're afraid being real might drive him away. But here's the truth. Surface attraction doesn't create emotional connection. It creates short-term interest. If there's nothing underneath that surface, no emotional depth, no real communication, no genuine curiosity about who he is, then the relationship becomes shallow, fast, and a shallow connection has a short shelf life. A relationship that truly lasts is one that allows both people to be seen. And for a woman, this means moving beyond just looking good or being pleasant company. It's about expressing who she is in full color, her beliefs, her passions, her boundaries, her expectations. It's about being curious about who he is, not just how he feels about her. When a man feels like he can let down his guard and be himself with you, that he doesn't need to impress you or play a role. He feels a sense of home. And when a man finds emotional safety with a woman, that's when he starts to attach in a real, lasting way. This doesn't mean you need to overshare, force vulnerability, or get deep too fast. It simply means being authentic, being present, and asking questions that go beyond the surface. Ask him about his goals, his values, what matters to him, not to impress him or gain his approval, but because you genuinely want to understand who he is. When you do that, you not only show emotional depth, you invite him to show up with depth as well. And don't forget, depth is also about how you live your own life. If you have purpose, if you have a life that excites you, if you're actively growing, learning, evolving, that is deeply attractive. It's not about always being available or molding yourself into what you think he wants. It's about being so full and grounded in who you are that you naturally pull in someone who wants to know more, stay longer, and invest deeper. The bottom line, if you want more than a fleeting connection, if you want a man to be emotionally hooked, not just temporarily interested, you have to stop leading with only attraction. Let attraction be the spark, but let depth be the foundation. Because it's not your looks, your flirty text, or your ability to be low maintenance that makes a man stay. It's your ability to connect, to hold space, to be real. Attraction might be what catches his eye, but connection, real, emotional, vulnerable connection, is what keeps his heart. There's a big misconception in dating that being a high-value woman means being elusive, playing games, or keeping someone guessing. You hear a lot of advice like, don't text back too fast, make him work for her, or act like you don't care. But let's be real. Most of that is just manipulation dressed up as strategy. And while it might create a short-term sense of mystery, it doesn't build trust, emotional safety, or long-term attraction. Being high value isn't about pretending to be something you're not. It's not about ignoring someone to seem busy or acting cold so they chase you. That kind of approach creates confusion, not connection. A truly high-value woman isn't interested in playing games because she understands that her power doesn't come from controlling someone's behavior, it comes from owning her standards and knowing what she deserves. High value is about clarity. It's about self-respect. It's about being rooted in your worth and communicating it without fear. When you're high value, you don't try to win someone over by shrinking, overextending, or tolerating half-hearted efforts. You simply show up as you are, and you allow the right person to rise to meet you. That doesn't mean being demanding, cold, or inflexible. It means you have a healthy relationship with yourself first. You know your non-negotiables. You know how you want to feel in a relationship. And most importantly, you don't compromise your emotional well-being just to keep someone around. You're not afraid to express your needs, not because you're trying to test someone, but because you're grounded enough to believe your needs matter. This is where a lot of women unintentionally lower their value, not because they lack it, but because they forget to act in alignment with it. They start excusing poor communication, inconsistent effort, emotional unavailability. They justify it, hoping that being understanding will eventually earn them the relationship they want. But here's the truth. A man doesn't respect what you say you deserve. He respects what you enforce with your action. If you say you want consistency, but you keep entertaining someone who comes and goes, your words don't carry weight. If you say you want emotional intimacy, but you accept surface-level connection, you're teaching him how little he has to give to keep access to you. And slowly, without realizing it, you become the one trying to prove your worth instead of expecting him to meet your standards. Being high value means you don't chase. You don't beg for attention, love, or clarity. You don't twist yourself into knots to be chosen. Instead, you choose yourself first. You show interest when it's reciprocated. You stay open, but you don't overextend. You're generous, but you're not a doormat. And if someone isn't showing up in a way that aligns with the kind of relationship you want, you're not afraid to walk. What's powerful about this is that it changes the dynamic entirely. When a man senses that your self-worth isn't dependent on his validation, it shifts how he approaches you. You become a mirror, reflecting whether he's ready to step up or not. And if he isn't, you're not clinging to the potential. You're clear, grounded, and moving forward with or without him. High value is not performance, it's embodiment. It's not about withholding or manipulating. It's about leading with integrity. When you stop trying to be enough for someone and start living like you are already enough, that's when everything changes. You don't keep a man by lowering your standards. You keep the right man by holding them. When a man feels like he's only valued for how he looks, what he gives, or how he makes someone feel, it becomes a transaction. And just like any transaction, when it stops feeling worth the effort, he pulls away. But when he feels emotionally understood, when he can show up as his full self without judgment or pretense, that's when something deeper is built. And that kind of bond isn't easy to walk away from. Many women unknowingly create a dynamic where the relationship stays on the surface. It's not because they don't care or aren't capable of depth. It's usually because they're trying to maintain a version of themselves they think is more likable, more desirable, more safe. They avoid difficult conversations, hide parts of themselves, and focus more on being pleasing than being present. But what that does is block the opportunity for real intimacy. True intimacy starts when both people feel like they can take off the mask. When a man can talk about his fears, his ambitions, his insecurities, and you don't try to fix him, shrink him, or judge him, that's when he starts to feel emotionally safe with you. That safety is rare, and it's that rare feeling of being fully seen that hooks him on a much deeper level than desire ever could. The challenge is that many women have been conditioned to believe that emotional expression is their domain, but not necessarily his. They're taught to be the caretakers of the relationship's emotional health, while he's allowed to stay a little more distant, a little more guarded. But what if you shifted that dynamic? What if, instead of always trying to impress him, you tried to understand him? Ask him real questions, not just about what he does, but why he does it. Ask what he's passionate about, what scares him, what he hopes for in life. And when he answers, don't just listen to respond, listen to connect. Most men don't get that kind of space very often, even from people they're dating. And when you're the person who gives that to him, it creates a bond that's rooted in emotional value, not just physical chemistry. This doesn't mean you should turn into his therapist or carry the emotional load of the relationship. That's not your job. But what you can do is create an environment where both of you feel safe being yourselves. That's what makes a man let down his guard, and that's when real closeness begins. And here's the best part. When a man feels seen, he starts seeing you more clearly too. He becomes more attentive, more invested, more open. It becomes a loop of emotional generosity, not a chase for attention. You're no longer trying to keep his interest because his interest becomes naturally rooted in who you are, not what you're doing to impress him. Being desirable might get his attention, but if you want something deeper, if you want to build something lasting, shift your focus. Instead of thinking, how can I keep him wanting me? Ask, how can I create a space where we both feel understood? Because when a man feels deeply seen, not just desired, he stops looking elsewhere, he stays. There's a belief that's been ingrained in a lot of women when it comes to relationships, this idea that it's their responsibility to keep the man happy, to avoid conflict, to keep the peace, to constantly give and give so that he stays content. It often sounds like if I can just make him happy enough, he won't leave, or if I don't rock the boat, everything will be okay. But this mindset is one of the biggest reasons women end up in unbalanced, emotionally draining relation, because trying to keep him happy is not only impossible, it's also not your job. In a healthy relationship, happiness is something both people are individually responsible for. You bring your own fulfillment to the table, and so does he. The moment one person takes on the emotional labor for both, the relationship starts to lose its balance. When a woman constantly puts his needs above her own, she begins to shrink. She silences her voice, minimizes her desires, and sacrifices her well-being just to avoid discomfort or disapproval. Over time, this doesn't build closeness, it builds resentment. What's even more harmful is that this pattern is often mistaken for love. You care about someone, so you want to make them happy, right? Of course. But there's a difference between generosity and over-accommodation. There's a difference between showing up for someone and abandoning yourself in the process. If you're always putting his happiness above your own, you're not in a partnership, you're in a performance. Conflict is not the enemy of connection, avoidance is. When you're constantly avoiding hard conversations just to keep things smooth, you're robbing both of you of the chance to grow. You're creating a dynamic where you can't be fully honest. And if you can't be honest, you're not actually building intimacy. You're maintaining an illusion. The most powerful thing you can do in a relationship is to show up as your whole self. That means speaking up when something doesn't feel right. That means saying no when you need to, setting boundaries when they're being crossed, and expressing your needs clearly. This isn't selfish. It's necessary, because a man who genuinely values you doesn't want you to suppress yourself just to please him. He wants a partner who's real, grounded, and honest. But too many women have been conditioned to think that expressing discomfort or having high standards will scare a man away. And sometimes it does. But that's not a bad thing. The kind of man who's intimidated by your voice, your boundaries, or your needs isn't the kind of man who's capable of loving you in the way you deserve. Let him be scared. Let him leave. Because if your peace depends on silence, it's not real peace. It's suppression. You don't need to work overtime to manage his emotions. You don't have to walk on eggshells or earn your place by being easygoing all the time. Your role isn't to be his emotional caretaker or fixer. It's to be yourself, fully and unapologetically. A strong relationship is built on mutual respect, not one person endlessly compromising to keep the other comfortable. So if you've been stuck in the cycle of trying to keep him happy, pause and ask yourself, what have you been giving up to do that? Your voice, your boundaries, your joy? Because the price of that performance is far too high. A real connection isn't built on trying to be what someone wants. It's built on showing who you are. And the right person won't just be happy because of you, they'll be happy with you. Together as equals. You're not here to manage someone's feelings. You're here to be met in your truth. And that's the only kind of relationship worth having. There's something incredibly magnetic about a woman who is emotionally independent. Not the kind of independence that's cold, closed off, or says, I don't need anyone, but the kind that comes from knowing who you are, feeling grounded in your own life, and not needing a relationship to complete you. That kind of emotional stability creates a powerful energy because it tells the world, and any man you're dating, that your happiness doesn't hinge on someone else's presence or approval. A lot of women fall into the trap of believing that being deeply in love or committed means becoming emotionally dependent. They start investing their entire emotional world into the relationship. Their moods rise and fall based on how much attention they're getting, how quickly he responds, or how in sync things feel that week. And while those emotional ups and downs feel natural in a romantic connection, they can become unhealthy when they take over your sense of self. Emotional independence means you bring your whole self into the relationship. You still have your own passions, your own friendships, your own goals. You don't lose yourself in the dynamic. You stay rooted in your identity outside of it. This doesn't mean you don't care deeply or that you're unavailable emotionally. It means your sense of inner peace isn't dependent on how someone else is acting or feeling. You can love someone fully without becoming emotionally consumed by them. And here's the irony. This kind of energy is exactly what draws people in. A woman who is emotionally self-contained and at peace with herself isn't constantly seeking reassurance, isn't looking for validation in every text or interaction. That creates space in the relationship for curiosity, desire, and attraction to grow naturally. You're not trying to pull someone closer. You're standing still, grounded, inviting them to meet you there. Men are drawn to women who are secure in themselves because it creates a different kind of connection. One that isn't about control, fear, or constant emotional management. It becomes a space where both people can show up authentically. Emotional independence also builds trust because when a man knows you're not going to fall apart if things get hard or expect him to be your sole emotional provider, he feels free to be real with you, not performative. Relationships are healthiest when both people know how to self-soothe, when they don't rely on each other to fix every low mood or heal every old wound. Of course, you can support each other. That's part of love. But the foundation of that support has to come from two people who already know how to regulate their own emotional world. And when you show that you're emotionally secure, it shifts the dynamic. You no longer feel the need to chase, to prove, or to earn. You show up, you express yourself honestly, and you let things unfold without clinging to outcomes. That's not passive, it's powerful. It means you're so confident in your value that you don't need to control how someone else responds to it. You're open to love, but not desperate for it. Women who embody this kind of energy naturally set the tone for deeper, more intentional relationships. They're not afraid to be alone, and that's why they attract partners who show up with intention. They know that if something isn't right, they'll be okay walking away, and that clarity is attractive. It shows strength, it shows maturity. When you stop needing someone to give you worth, you become someone who adds value to every space you enter, including your relationships. That kind of woman doesn't need to keep anyone. Because the right man wants to stay, emotional independence isn't about building walls. It's about building a life that no one else has the power to dismantle. And from that place, love isn't survival. It's a beautiful bonus. One of the most overlooked secrets to building a lasting connection is maintaining your mystery, not in a manipulative or distant way, but in the sense of preserving your individuality, your growth, and your sense of self, no matter how close you get to someone. Mystery isn't about withholding affection or playing games. It's about having a life so rich, so full, and so dynamic that someone is always discovering new layers of you. That continuous unfolding is what keeps long-term intrigue alive. In the early stages of dating, mystery happens naturally. Everything is new. You're learning each other's stories, quirks, and habits. But as time goes on, many women start to overshare too soon or merge too quickly into the relationship, thinking that full transparency or giving everything up front is what creates closeness. And while emotional openness is essential, giving too much too soon, especially before emotional trust is fully established, can overwhelm the dynamic and remove the natural pace that allows connection to deepen over time. A man becomes emotionally invested when there's a sense of progression, when there's something to explore, not just about the relationship, but about you. That doesn't mean you need to be guarded or secretive. It means you allow space. You let things unfold with intention. You keep living your life, growing in your own ways and staying connected to your passions, friendships, and inner world. That way, even as someone gets to know you more, they realize there's always more to know. That's real mystery, and it's captivating. Women believe that being available all the time, being completely accessible, or centering their life around the relationship is how you show commitment. But what that does, especially early on, is signal that your world begins and ends with him. It takes the dynamic from curiosity to predictability. And let's be honest, predictability without depth leads to boredom. What keeps someone hooked isn't constant availability. It's the energy of a woman who still has her own orbit, her own dreams, her own evolving story. This is what most people get wrong. They confuse emotional availability with emotional overexposure. You can be deeply open, kind, and supportive while still having a private world that belongs just to you. You can share your thoughts and feelings while still letting someone earn deeper levels of access. Think of it like a beautiful book. You don't hand over the final chapter on the first date. You let someone turn the pages, one by one, building connection, understanding, and appreciation along the way. Maintaining mystery also keeps the relationship balanced. It encourages the other person to stay engaged, to keep learning you, to keep asking questions. When you preserve that sense of individuality and growth, you give your partner a reason to stay curious. And curiosity is what keeps the emotional spark alive. It creates a kind of active interest that fuels long-term attraction, not just physically, but emotionally and mentally too. And here's where the real magic happens: when a woman is rooted in herself, when she doesn't reveal everything immediately, not to manipulate, but to stay authentic and intentional, she teaches the man she's with that he doesn't get to possess her, he gets to discover her. That's the difference between someone who feels exciting in the moment and someone who continues to be mesmerizing over time. So don't confuse love with full surrender of your identity. Don't lose your sense of self in an effort to feel safe or connected. Let love be a dance, not a complete merge. Keep learning, keep growing, keep evolving, because the more you expand as a person, the more there is to share, and the more there is to discover, the longer someone stays captivated. The real secret isn't in keeping him guessing, it's in continuing to grow so that he never stops wanting to know more. Not because you're hiding, but because you're evolving, and that's what makes love last. In conclusion, the secret to keeping him hooked isn't found in playing games, manipulating emotions, or trying to be someone you're not. It's about offering him a deeper connection, one that's rooted in authenticity, emotional depth, and mutual respect. It's about being a woman who knows her worth, understands her needs, and isn't afraid to express them. It's about balancing emotional independence with real intimacy, showing up as your whole self, with boundaries, curiosity, and the confidence to let things unfold naturally. Attraction might get his attention, but depth, clarity, and emotional connection are what will keep him invested in the long term. Don't try to keep him happy by shrinking yourself. Embrace your own individuality, nurture your own life, and maintain that sense of mystery that keeps the relationship exciting. Because when you're emotionally grounded, true to yourself, and not seeking validation from anyone else, you become the kind of woman who naturally draws the right kind of attention. Don't chase after a fleeting connection. Instead, build something deeper, something that stands the test of time. Because when a man feels truly seen and understood, when he knows you're not just a desire, but a partner in every sense of the word, he'll want to stay. Not out of obligation, but because he knows that what you have is real, fulfilling, and worth holding on to. The secret is simple. Keep being your authentic, evolving self and watch as the right person gravitates toward you. Not because you've played your cards right, but because the connection you offer is something rare, genuine, and unforgettable.